Still picking up phones at that tech place? Mom teased across the Christmas table, her voice carrying that special blend of disappointment and condescension she'd perfected over the years. Hey, it's honest work, I said, forcing a smile while cutting into the overcooked turkey she insisted on making every year despite everyone's gentle suggestions to try something else. Dad chuckled from his throne at the head of the table, already 3 bourbons deep. Who knows, maybe one day you'll make it all the way to secretary. The table erupted in laughter. My successful surgeon sister Diane, my investment banker brother Christopher, their equally accomplished spouses, even my teenage nieces who'd learned early that I was the family punchline. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, seeing my assistant's name flash urgently. I almost ignored it, family dinner rules, but the follow-up text made me pause. Urgent board waiting. Excuse me, I murmured, stepping away from the table. Let me guess, Christopher called after me. Someone's printer isn't working? More laughter followed me into the hallway as I answered the call. Ma'am, the board needs your approval for the $8.2 billion merger. Patricia's voice was professionally calm, but I could hear the underlying stress. Tokyo's markets open in 6 hours, and without your signature. The Yamamoto deal? I interrupted quietly, aware that voices carried in Mom's house. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Harrison says they need confirmation within the hour or Berkshire might swoop in. I glanced back at the dining room where my family was still laughing, probably making more jokes about my pretend job, as Mom liked to call it. For 3 years, I'd been coming to these dinners, enduring the mockery, the pitying looks, the constant comparisons to my siblings' visible success. Tell them I'll sign after dinner, I said clearly, not bothering to lower my voice anymore. And Patricia? Make sure the press release mentions that Innova Technologies is now the largest privately held tech company in North America. Yes, Ms. President. I ended the call and walked back to the dining room, where 7 pairs of eyes stared at me with varying degrees of confusion and disbelief. Everything all right at the call center? Diane asked sarcastically, but her voice wavered slightly. I sat down calmly, picked up my wine glass, and smiled. Actually, it was about a merger. We're acquiring Yamamoto Industries. You might have heard of them. They own about 30% of the semiconductor market in Asia. Christopher laughed, but it sounded forced. Right. And I'm buying Apple tomorrow. No, I said, taking a sip of wine. But fun fact, we did consider buying your bank last quarter. The board decided it wasn't worth the regulatory headaches. The silence stretched like taffy, sticky and uncomfortable. Mom was the first to recover. Sweetheart, these jokes aren't funny. We know you're embarrassed about your situation, but lying. Miranda, why don't you tell them about your actual job? My grandmother's voice cut through from the corner where everyone had forgotten she was sitting, 93 years old and sharp as a surgical scalpel. Or should I? Grandma Rose had been my only ally at these dinners, the only one who'd never joined in the mockery. Now I understood why. Grandma, I said softly, you knew? I own 12% of Innova Technologies, she said matter-of-factly, causing Mom to drop her fork. I was one of the original investors when you started the company 7 years ago. Did you all really think she was a receptionist? She has an MBA from Wharton and a computer science degree from Stanford. That's impossible, Dad sputtered. We would have known. She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. She drives a Tesla Model 3, not even the expensive one. The apartment is in the building I own, I said quietly. I live there because it's 5 minutes from the office. And I have 12 cars in various cities. The Tesla is just the most practical for daily commuting. Diane's surgeon hands were trembling. You're lying. You have to be lying. Last month you borrowed $50 from me for gas. I didn't have cash and the gas station's card reader was broken. I paid you back via Venmo immediately. I pulled out my phone, opening my banking app. Would you like to see the decimal points in my checking account, or would you prefer the investment portfolio? This is cruel, Mom's voice cracked. Making up stories because you're ashamed. Jennifer Morrison, Grandma interrupted, using my legal name that no one else knew. Miranda Jennifer Morrison, founder and CEO of Innova Technologies, named Fortune's Business Person of the Year last month. The magazine is in my purse if you'd like to see it. Christopher grabbed Grandma's purse with the desperation of a man reaching for a life raft. He pulled out the magazine, and there I was on the cover, professional photo shoot and all, with the headline, The Invisible Billionaire. How Morrison Built a Tech Empire in Plain Sight. That's photoshopped, Mom whispered, but even she didn't believe it. Page 37 has a lovely picture of her with the president at the White House Tech Summit, Grandma added helpfully. She's advising on the National Cybersecurity Initiative. My brother-in-law, James, who'd been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. Innova Technologies. You're your ghost. Everyone turned to look at him. Ghost? Diane asked her husband. It's what everyone in tech calls her, James explained, his face pale. No one knows what she looks like because she never does public appearances. She runs everything remotely. Only the board and key executives have ever met her in person. My company has been trying to get a meeting with Innova for 2 years. We've been told the CEO doesn't take cold meetings. Your company makes accounting software, I said. We reviewed it. The security vulnerabilities were concerning. James looked like he might faint. You reviewed our product personally? I review everything personally. It's why I work 18-hour days. I turned back to my parents. Which you'd know if you'd ever asked about my actual job instead of assuming I was lying when I said I worked in tech management. The dining room had become a tableau of frozen faces, like someone had hit pause on a family sitcom at the worst possible moment. My teenage nieces were frantically Googling on their phones, their eyes widening with each search result. Aunt Miranda, my eldest niece Sophie said slowly, it says here your worth. This can't be right. $4.7 billion as of market close on Friday, I confirmed. Though with the Yamamoto acquisition, it'll probably jump to around 6. Mom stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I need air. Sit down, Helen. Grandma commanded with the authority that had once run a small banking empire before retirement. You all need to hear this. Mom sat, but she looked like she might shatter at any moment. For 7 years, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. I've sat at this table while you've mocked me. Miranda's little phone job. Miranda's pretend office. At least she's pretty enough to answer phones. Do you remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago when you spent an hour comparing my failure to Diane's surgical career? Diane had the grace to look ashamed. Or last Easter, I continued, when Dad offered to lend me money to go back to school to learn a real skill? Or my birthday dinner when Christopher brought those application forms for entry-level positions at his bank because he was worried about my future? We were trying to help, Christopher protested weakly. No, you were trying to feel superior. The words came out sharper than intended. Every family dinner became a masterclass in condescension. Mom would send me job listings for receptionist positions at better companies. Dad would make jokes about me fetching coffee. You all took turns explaining the real world to me, as if I was a child playing pretend. Then why didn't you tell us? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Why let us? Let you what? Show me who you really are. I stood up, 3 years of suppressed frustration finally breaking through. Do you know why I kept coming to these dinners? Why I endured every joke, every pitying look, every condescending offer of help? They stared at me, waiting. Because I needed to know if my family could love me without my success. If I was worth anything to you beyond my achievements. I laughed, but it came out bitter. I got my answer. The only person at this table who treated me with respect when she thought I was a receptionist was Grandma, and she knew the truth all along. That's not fair, Diane protested. We didn't know. Exactly. I cut her off. You didn't know. You didn't ask. You didn't care. You assumed I was a failure and treated me accordingly. Do you know what I was doing while you were mocking me over Turkey? Running a company with 30,000 employees. Negotiating billion-dollar deals. Creating technology that powers half the internet's security infrastructure. My phone buzzed again. This time, I put it on speaker. Ms. Morrison, Patricia's voice filled the dining room. I apologize for interrupting your family dinner, but Secretary Chen is asking if you're available for a brief call about the federal contract. He says it's urgent. Secretary Chen? Dad asked faintly. As in the Secretary of Defense? Tell him I'll call him back in an hour, I told Patricia. And let the board know I'll sign the merger documents remotely in 30 minutes. Yes, ma'am. Also, the Journal wants to know if you'll comment on the acquisition. Standard statement about strategic growth and market positioning. You know the drill. Of course. Enjoy your dinner, ma'am. The call ended, leaving behind a silence, so complete I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. The Secretary of Defense, Dad repeated slowly, as if saying it again would make it less real. You have the Secretary of Defense calling you on Christmas Eve. It's about a cybersecurity contract for the Pentagon, I explained, suddenly exhausted. We're implementing new protocols for their communication systems. It's a matter of national security, so yes, sometimes that means Christmas Eve calls. Sophie, still clutching her phone, looked up at me with something approaching awe. Aunt Miranda, there's a whole Reddit thread about trying to figure out who you are. People have been speculating for years. Someone offered $1 million for a verified photo of you. I know, I said. I've seen it. It's actually quite entertaining. Someone's convinced I'm secretly Elon Musk in disguise. That broke the tension slightly, earning a nervous laugh from James. Christopher cleared his throat, his investment banker instincts finally overcoming his shock. The Yamamoto merger, that's going to reshape the entire semiconductor industry. How did you? 3 years of negotiation, I interrupted. 47 trips to Tokyo. Learning Japanese. Building relationships with families that have run these companies for generations. But you wouldn't know about that because every time I mentioned traveling for work, Mom would make comments about Miranda's imaginary business trips. Mom flinched as if I'd slapped her. I remember those, Diane said quietly. We used to joke that you were probably just going to Vegas. I was in Tokyo, Beijing, London, Dubai, building an empire while you all thought I was playing pretend. I pulled up my calendar on my phone, showing them the last month alone. Board meeting in Singapore. Tech summit in Berlin. Congressional hearing in D.C. about data privacy regulations. I literally helped write the bill that passed last month. The Morrison Act, James breathed. That was named after you? That's the most significant tech legislation in a decade. It was nice of them to name it after me, considering I spent 2 years of my life drafting it. Grandma Rose stood up, moving with the dignity of someone who'd seen enough family drama for 2 lifetimes. I think it's time I showed them the photo wall. Grandma, no, I protested, but she was already heading to her purse again. She pulled out a tablet, swiping through photos with practiced ease. This is Miranda with Tim Cook at the Apple partnership announcement. Here she is with Satya Nadella when Microsoft tried to acquire Innova. She turned down $22 billion, by the way. Oh, and this one's my favorite, Miranda receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her work in quantum encryption. She turned the tablet toward my frozen family. I've been documenting everything because I knew this day would come. The day you'd all realize you've been mocking one of the most powerful people in technology for serving instant mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving. They weren't instant, I muttered, though at this point, defending my cooking seemed absurdly trivial. You turned down $22 billion? Christopher's voice cracked. In his world of finance, that number was beyond comprehension. It wasn't the right fit, I said simply. We're worth more independent. But why? Mom finally found her voice again, and it was thick with tears. Why hide this from us? Your family? I sat back down, suddenly feeling the weight of 3 years of pretense. Because I wanted to know if I mattered to you as just Miranda. Not the CEO. Not the billionaire. Just your daughter who, as you so often reminded me, was struggling to find her way. That's manipulation, Diane accused, but her voice was weak. No, I countered. Manipulation would be using my money and power to control you. I just existed. I came to dinners, brought wine, listened to your lives, celebrated your successes. I was just myself, minus the Fortune 500 company. And you couldn't stand that version of me. We were worried about you, Dad protested. You were embarrassed by me, I corrected. How many times did you introduce Diane as our daughter the surgeon and Christopher as our son at Goldman Sachs while I was Miranda? She's in transition right now. The accuracy of the quote made him wince. Every family Christmas card, I continued, listed Diane's publications and Christopher's promotions. For me, Miranda is exploring opportunities in the tech sector. 3 years running. We didn't know what to say, Mom admitted. Our daughter Miranda works in technology would have been enough. But you couldn't even give me that dignity. My phone rang again. This time, it was a video call from Tokyo. I almost declined it, but then decided my family needed to see this. Mr. Yamamoto, I answered in fluent Japanese, switching the phone to show my face. I apologize for the delay. I'm with family for Christmas dinner. The elderly Japanese businessman on the screen smiled warmly. Morrison-san, my apologies for interrupting. I wanted to personally confirm our agreement before the announcement. This merger will change both our companies' destinies. The contracts are ready, I assured him in Japanese. I'll sign within the hour. Excellent. My father would have been proud to see our companies unite. He always said you reminded him of himself, willing to do whatever it takes to build something lasting. That's the highest compliment you could give me, Yamamoto-san. We exchanged a few more pleasantries before ending the call. When I looked up, my family was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You speak Japanese, Mom said flatly. 4 languages fluently, 3 conversationally, I replied. It's necessary in international business. This is insane. Christopher ran his hands through his hair, messing up his perfect banker's haircut. My sister is Ghost. The Ghost. Do you know how many people at my firm would kill for 5 minutes with you? Probably the same ones who laughed when you mentioned your underachieving sister at last year's company Christmas party. Yes, I heard about that. Your colleague Brad's wife is on my board of directors. Christopher went pale. Oh God, I've been trash-talking you to people who work for you. Technically work with me. I don't believe in hierarchical management structures. I stood up again. But yes, several of your colleagues are investors in Innova. They've been very diplomatic about not correcting your misconceptions. I'm going to be a laughingstock, he moaned. No, I said firmly. Because this stays in this room until the official announcement tomorrow. After that, you can tell people whatever you want. That you knew all along and were protecting my privacy. That we had a family agreement to keep it secret. I don't care. I won't contradict whatever story you choose. Why? Diane asked. Why protect us after everything? Because despite everything, you're still my family. And because Grandma asked me to give you one chance to do better. All eyes turned to Grandma Rose, who was calmly sipping her wine as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of Christmas dinner. I've watched this family for 3 years, she said simply. Watched how you treated Miranda when you thought she was nobody important. It broke my heart, but it also showed me something important. Success has made you cruel. You've forgotten what it means to be kind to someone who can't do anything for you. That's not, Mom started. Helen, you literally uninvited Miranda from your hospital fundraiser last year because you didn't want to explain her situation to your society friends. Grandma cut her off. Diane, you told her she couldn't be a bridesmaid in Jennifer's wedding because the other bridesmaids were all professionals, and she wouldn't fit in. Christopher, you've spent 3 years making her the punchline of every family joke. Each accusation landed like a physical blow. But Miranda, Grandma continued, turning to me, kept coming. Kept smiling. Kept loving you all despite your cruelty. Do you know why I really invested in her company? We all waited. Because when she made her first $1 million, the very first thing she did was set up college funds for all her nieces and nephews. When she made her first $100 million, she paid off your mortgages. Yes, all of you, through a bank error you never questioned. When she made her first $1 billion, she donated a wing to the hospital where Helen volunteers, anonymously, just because she knew it would make her mother happy to have a world-class cardiac unit. The silence was deafening. Mom's face had gone white, Diane was crying, and Christopher looked like he might be sick. The cardiac unit, Mom whispered. The Morrison wing. That was you. Surprise, I said weakly. $25 million, Mom continued. The board couldn't figure out who the donor was. We thought it was some grateful patient's estate. You always complained the old cardiac unit was inadequate, I shrugged. So I fixed it. Our mortgages, Christopher said slowly. 3 years ago, the bank said there was a processing error, that we'd been overcharged interest for years. They refunded us exactly what we owed. Creative accounting, I admitted. Though technically legal. I had my lawyers make sure. The college funds, Diane's voice was barely audible. The scholarship Sophie got to Princeton. The grant that covers all expenses. Every kid deserves a chance at education without debt, I said simply. Sophie suddenly burst into tears. You've been paying for my school? The whole time, while we were making fun of you. You're 18, I told my niece gently. You were following the adult's lead. I don't blame you. But I do, Sophie sobbed. Last month I told my roommate you were nobody important. That you were the family disappointment. I was ashamed of you. The words hung in the air like a confession in church. Well, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Technically, I am nobody important. Ghost doesn't exist, remember? I'm just the voice on conference calls and the signature on contracts. Stop, Mom said suddenly, standing up. Stop being gracious. Stop being kind. We don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. She was crying now, not pretty tears, but the ugly kind that came with real remorse. I failed you. As a mother, I completely failed you. I let my own insecurities about status and success poison how I saw my own daughter. Mom. No, let me finish. When you didn't follow the traditional path like Diane and Christopher, I was embarrassed. Not of you, but of myself. What would people think? What kind of mother raises a child who answers phones for a living? So I made you the family joke to protect my own ego. She looked me in the eyes for the first time in years, really looked. I'm so sorry, Miranda. Not because you're successful, but because I should have loved you regardless. I did love you regardless, I said quietly. That's why this hurts so much. The dam broke then. Mom crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. The first real one in years, not the performative air kisses we'd grown accustomed to. Can you forgive us? She whispered. I've been forgiving you every day for 3 years, I whispered back. I just wanted you to see what you were doing. One by one they came. Diane, Christopher, even the kids. The group hug was awkward and tearful, and probably looked ridiculous, but it was real in a way our family hadn't been in years. When we finally separated, Grandma Rose raised her wine glass. A toast, she announced. To Miranda, who showed us that the most powerful person in the room is often the quietest. And to second chances, which are rare and precious and should never be wasted. We drank, and for the first time in 3 years, I tasted something other than bitterness at a family dinner. So, Christopher said awkwardly, clearly trying to process everything, the merger announcement tomorrow. We'll make international headlines, I confirmed. Fair warning, reporters might contact you. The press has been trying to unmask Ghost for years. What should we say? Diane asked. Whatever feels right. Though I'd prefer if you didn't sell exclusive interviews to the highest bidder. As if we would, Christopher started, then stopped. Actually, yeah, last week I probably would have. At least he was honest. My phone buzzed with another message from Patricia. Secretary Chin says it can wait until after Christmas. He sends his regards to your family. How does he know you're with family? Dad asked. Because unlike you, he asked about my Christmas plans, I said, not unkindly. He has 5 kids. We bond over family dynamics. The Secretary of Defense bonds with you over family dynamics, Dad repeated, shaking his head. My daughter gossips with cabinet members. Actually, we mostly discuss his son's coding projects. Kevin's 12 and already building neural networks. I'm mentoring him. Of course you are, Christopher muttered, but there was wonder in his voice now, not mockery. As we returned to dinner, the food had gone cold, but nobody seemed to care. Sophie asked the question I'd been waiting for. Aunt Miranda, why Ghost? Why hide it all? I considered how to answer. When I started Innova, I was 23, female, and looked younger than I was. Nobody took me seriously in meetings. So I started conducting business remotely by phone and email. Let my work speak instead of my face. By the time the company was big enough that my appearance wouldn't matter, Ghost had become a legend. And legends, I learned, are more powerful than people. But lonely, Grandma added softly. Yes, I admitted. Very lonely. Not anymore, Mom said firmly. No more Ghost at family dinners. Just Miranda, our daughter, who happens to run a multi-billion-dollar company, but more importantly, who's been patient and loving enough to give us a second chance we don't deserve. Does this mean you'll stop sending me receptionist job listings? I asked with a small smile. Oh God, Mom groaned. How many did I send? 47 over 3 years. I kept them all. My assistant found them hilarious. Your assistant knew about this? Patricia's been with me since the beginning. She's the one who suggested I keep coming to family dinners. She said eventually you'd either see me for who I am, or I'd see you for who you are. Either way, I'd get clarity. Smart woman, Grandma said. Give her a raise. She owns 2% of the company. Trust me, she's doing fine. As we talked, something shifted. The dynamics that had been frozen for 3 years began to thaw. Christopher asked genuine questions about the merger. Diane wanted to understand the medical technology division we'd been developing. Dad, an engineer before retirement, became fascinated with our quantum computing research. For the first time in years, they were seeing me. Not the phantom success story they'd imagined Diane and Christopher to be, not the failure they'd painted me as, but the actual person I was. When my phone rang again, this time with "Hail to the Chief" as the ringtone, everyone froze. Is that? Mom started. I should take this, I said apologetically. It'll just be a minute. As I stepped into the hallway to discuss national security protocols with the President of the United States on Christmas Eve, I heard Christopher say, We're idiots, aren't we? Complete idiots, Diane agreed. But idiots with a second chance, Grandma Rose said firmly. And for the first time in 3 years, I believed that might be enough.